the federal government has said that certain services should be provided at the local level because they're closest to the people, and that's where they should be delivered. And the idea here is that as we raise these taxes, the federal government recognizes we're asking local governments to do certain things, so we're not going to double tax individuals who pay these taxes. The reason we're talking about it now is as Congress goes through a expansive, comprehensive tax reform package, which is needed. We do need federal tax reform, especially on the corporate side. We have some real issues with the rest of the world and the global environment. But what they're proposing to do is to eliminate the state and local tax deduction as something that individuals can deduct when they file their personal income taxes. What it really means, especially in New York, because we have high state and local income taxes, is that you will no longer be able to deduct that. Most homeowners that itemize their deductions in New York, probably 90% or more in a lot of jurisdictions in New York, use the state and local tax deduction. And it's hugely beneficial to New Yorkers just because we do have a high local tax burden. The federal government is changing the deductibility because it raises a lot of revenue for the federal government. And as they raise revenue, they can use that revenue to change some other aspect of the tax code. In this situation, they're lowering tax rates across the board for individuals, but they're also changing tax rates for corporations and the taxes they pay in the future. The problem we have with this right now is New York benefits more than most states from this provision. And will negatively be impacted more. As an individual taxpayer, how you end up from what's been proposed in the House version, which has passed in the House side, it really depends on your individual circumstances. If you're a family that owns a home, the larger your family is, you could end up paying more taxes under these proposals. And even the Joint Committee on Taxation, which is Congress's official scorekeeper on tax bills, has indicated by 2025 and 2027, when we get out further out, most taxpayers in the state of New York will be paying more federal income taxes as proposed. And the reason, a big chunk of that reasoning is because of the SALT provision. When we lose that deductibility, we get behind the 8 ball when it comes to federal taxes. The House has passed their version of the bill. The Senate is working on their version this week. It's unclear if they'll be able to pass it this week or maybe early next week. Once the two houses pass their bills, they have to work out their differences because there are some significant differences between the two bills. That would be a conference committee that would have to go back to each chamber to be voted on in the House and the Senate. So they do have a lot of work ahead of them. They also have a lot of work. Funding for the federal government ends next week. They have a lot of other deadlines they have to do while trying to do tax reform at the same time. The impact on individual governments, local governments in New York and nationwide as a whole, with the elimination of the SALT deduction, the local tax becomes more of a burden locally on the taxpayer. And because of that, there's going to be a lot of pressure on local communities and jurisdictions to not raise as much revenue for the services they provide. So school districts are concerned that it's going to put pressure on their ability to raise revenue to support the school system. Counties are going to have the exact same concern. It's especially burdensome for counties because you're mandated to provide these federal and state services, but at the same time, the taxes we use to pay for those services are going to become more negative from an individual taxpayer perspective because they can no longer deduct that. They're paying taxes on taxes they've already paid. First time in our country's history we're going to be in a situation where the federal government is taxing a local tax. In addition to eliminating the state and local tax deduction, they're also limiting mortgage interest deduction in the House bill, which the realtors are concerned it could impact house values in the near term to as much as a 10% reduction in home value because it's an economic factor that someone considers when they buy a house. How much can I afford in my monthly payment? Well, part of my monthly payment is mortgage, part of it's property tax. Well, if I can't deduct the property tax anymore, do I want to buy a home of this value, or am I going to limit myself and say, well, no, I can't pay that much for a home anymore? So it will have some impact on real estate in the short term. Over the long term, I think it's unclear. But there are concerns there that we should watch.